Hello everypony, I'm MasterCode, your ace analyst, and today we'll be looking at all 3 issues of the Feats of Friendship arc starring the Young Six. Created by the School of Friendship, the event is a series of team-oriented contests challenging students to apply all the lessons they've learned at the school into practical real-world events. Twilight, of course, rounds up the usual suspects to be one of the teams competing, that being Gallus, Ocellus, Jonas, Silverstream, Smolder, and Sandbar, because apparently there exists no other outstanding students at the School of Friendship and every pony else may as well just be a pariah. We're then introduced to the 7th member of their team, Swiftfoot, who Sandbar immediately has the hots for. I do like her design, her mane and tail short with a sort of rarity vibe, yet still original, and I like the color contrast between the dark gray and the dark green. They mesh really well, but it seems that the new girl might not be on the level.
My evil plan is going perfectly, but I'm definitely not a villain.
Wow, subtle. Smolder volunteers to help with setting up the event, much to the chagrin of others, and Swiftfoot assists each of them individually, all the while attempting to break down the group. I'll admit, on my initial reading, I found the reasoning for the students expressing disdain for one another rather weak, like here where Gallus talks about how happy he is being a rep for friendship between ponies and griffins, and only 5 seconds later, he accuses his friends of not complimenting his leadership skills. Or Swift playing to Ocellus' vulnerabilities, believing her changeling powers frighten her friends. Yeah, because we've clearly seen her friends absolutely frightened of her ability to change into any various creature at will. Looking back, while the motivations seem simplistic, Swiftfoot's play on their vulnerabilities actually makes sense, working each of the foreign races' sense of identity. All of them have traveled great distances, leaving their comfort zone and homes to attend an institution interacting with species they normally wouldn't see on a daily basis. In issue 84, Ocellus brought up how she wants to show her powers for good, knowing that there are those out there who still fear changelings despite their reformation. Here, Swift manipulates Ocellus to believe that changelings remain in that new form not by choice, but rather conforming to a more pleasing form for ponies. Realizing her freedom to change is kind of limited. With Silver, Swift brought up the pain and suffering caused by the Storm King and Equestria supposedly abandoning them. Smolder's is probably the weakest to justify, being that gems aren't part of the school's food supply, and not having anything for dragons, but it still works for the whole exclusionary angle. Yona is frustrated with her friends as they haven't learned her language despite learning all about equestrian culture. Gallus has lived alone all his life, experiencing years of resentment while he was young. Swift strokes his ego, saying he's a natural leader, telling him that such potential should be praised. For Sandbar, it's a combination of being torn between loyalty to his friends and mare booty. Overall, this is a pretty good setup for the rest of this arc. We cut to the opening ceremonies at the Coliseum, and I gotta wonder how much of the school's budget was blown on it. I can just imagine the initial announcement. Good news, students, we now have a stadium. Which means all extracurricular activities have been cut. We then catch up with Twilight, recapping the events of Heartswarming Eve and the 3 tribes, I guess 4 tribes that were present during the event. Strap yourselves in, folks, you're in for a boatload of stupid. So apparently this 4th tribe, led by a King Thrace, saw the 3 tribes uniting and wished to join them as well. And apparently they gave him the cold shoulder. Where does one even begin? Now, admittedly, Heartswarming is one of, if not the most critical moments in Equestria's history, and seeing it from a different perspective or interpretation while keeping the original spirit adds to the already rich lore of the nation's birth. So apparently the king's home was decimated by the Wendigos and his tribe was looking for a new location to rebuild. Interesting idea, seeing this incident through the lens of a 4th party, relaying the damage that could have destroyed Equestria, feeling sympathy for a tribe's destroyed kingdom, all the while introducing us to a new race. The problem is how this revelation clashes with the original founders of Equestria lore, who again literally just set aside their differences, joining their hooves in the fires of friendship. Then they saw this random guy and basically told him to piss off. Why? Was he too intimidating? Was his beard too long? Was it because he was a stallion? We're never told, and it doesn't make any sense.
One guy with superpowers is okay, and that other guy with superpowers is some kind of horrible freak. There's Spider-Man! Wow! We love Spider-Man! Hey, look, a mutant! Fuck him!
Why did the 3 tribes see each other as equals, and this guy is some kind of pariah or outcast?
It just raises too many questions.
Also, in an odd bit of story framing, Swiftfoot is telling this backstory of her tribe while lost in her own thoughts, while in another flashback, as her flashback of herself is chiding her father. So the Feats of Friendship begin with an apple harvesting event, though between you and me, I think AJ just wanted free student labor and bucking apples out of her trees. Now I have a couple questions concerning this whole Feats of Friendship event. There are at least 2 other teams, which we've only seen briefly, and I know winning doesn't really matter, it's all about the spirit of friendship and whatnot, but in the second competition, it's specifically rigged so that all teams had all the tools and supplies necessary to construct a bridge divided amongst them, and apparently they were all meant to come together and build one bridge. I guess that's fine. I mean, these events are meant to demonstrate camaraderie and friendship in real-world settings, but how often are you going to use cooperation during an attack from a 3-headed monstrosity from Tartarus? Yes, Twilight actually got in contact with the prisons of Tartarus to bring a dangerous creature here. What is this, the Tri-Wizrd tournament? It's a good thing OSHA doesn't exist in this world, otherwise this school would have been hit with so much litigation, Twilight's great-great-great-great-grandfolds would be still paying dues. Ignoring the possible lawsuits, a legit problem I have with this scene is when Alcillus, after locking herself in a cage for safety, is dragged out by Sandbar totally against her will. Sandbar has always been the most chill of the group. He can be firm and assertive when necessary, but this is just too far. It's not only wrong from a character standpoint, but it feels artificial because up until this point, while the students individually dislike one or more in their group, Sandbar is the only one who hasn't earned the ire of any pony else. Thus, the story needed a forced reason for at least one of the other kids to dislike him, because true friendship is all about forcing each other in dangerous situations against your will. That aside, what I do like about this arc is that while the friends are clearly frustrated with each other in the first issue, it does take multiple attempts for Swift to break apart the group, and even with each new event, it only mildly perturbs them. Had they fallen apart completely in the first issue, it would have felt extremely artificial, especially considering all the previous friendship misadventures they've had. And by the end of the second issue, the discourse between the 6 finally comes to a head and every creature is at each other's throats. Issue 3 is where we finally learn the master plan behind this whole ordeal, and what is King planned for revenge for being scorned ages ago? Reveal to Equestria that friendship is fragile! Huh, what a jerk. But okay, let's be fair, let's think about this from his perspective. The Young Six, as I mentioned, are ambassadors to different races around the world, and tensions are lukewarm to neutral amongst most. If said ambassadors will return to their homes and convince their leaders that ponies and other creatures cannot exist, then yeah, tensions would rise. To the extent of all-out war? Probably not, but every creature would be in perpetual disdain of one another. So let's say his plan was a complete success and every creature hates Equestria. Okay, he has his revenge. Then what? Yeah, he may have proven his point, but he doesn't gain anything really. He doesn't plan to take over Equestria or seek any of its resources. He's kind of done after that. The motivation behind this plot is definitely one of the weaker elements of the story. Now, I've talked about Swift in this review, but I really haven't talked about her. At first, she didn't really seem that interesting, looking like another one-dimensional manipulative villain. However, in issue 2, we see it's just a facade, and she has some funny moments like her broken from her reverie or fear of being attacked by various creatures, showing she's not just an evil brooding mare. When we get to issue 3, her behavior makes sense. She's lived on a miserable looking island that's constantly pounded by terrible weather, her sisters constantly tease her father is cold and blunt, and the Thracians appear to be nothing more than a militaristic, uncaring society that balk friendship in favor of unity through hatred. So we can kind of understand Swift's malevolent behavior being a product of her environment, and her progression to a more kinder mare feels natural. Again, growing up, she never really experienced any real love or kindness from any pony else, and to fill that void, she goes on this mission technically to bring down friendship, but mostly just to please her father. And when she finally meets a group of creatures that want to actually befriend her, all her perceptions of friendship taught by her father are completely shattered, as even with the Young Six constantly arguing with each other, they still want to stay friends with her. And while the fate of Swift and her mission for the Thracians is left ambiguous, the experience and her newfound friends did leave an impact on her. Lastly, I'll cover the art with Fleeks and Breckle as our artists. I mentioned Swift's design earlier, but I love the greenish-blue gradients in her mane along with its beautiful curly nature. I also like the setting of the Thrace Island as well. MLP often uses Greek or Roman aesthetics in various parts of the show, and the Thracians are no different, wearing similar sashes and robes. And side note, the gang has epic beard. The Young Six themselves are very expressive, creating many comedic or dramatic moments. The backgrounds and landscapes look absolutely amazing. The Colosseum is highly detailed with hundreds of characters lining the stands, even with main 6 clones. I like the contrasting color palettes from Equestria and the Thracian Kingdom, showing Ponyville as bright and colorful and the Thrace Kingdom dull and gray. In the end, while I had some issues with the story elements, it was still a decent story. I liked the interactions and the development between the students, the artwork was fantastic, lots of unique ideas, and while all didn't pan out, this is still an okay art. Well, that's it for today, guys. Until next time, MC!